I call Jami-Lee Ross.
Mr Speaker, Andrew Little, Chris Farfoy and Phil Goff should be hanging their heads in shame for coming to this House and arguing against this piece of legislation. Because, Mr Speaker, what they're telling this Parliament is that the people out there in New Zealand who want to be kept free from gang intimidation, who want to be kept free from the threatening behaviour of gang members, should not be protected by legislation like this. Legislation like this, which will ensure that gang intimidation, threatening behaviour by gangs cannot take place in public places. Those members over the other side, and I include the Green Party members here, who oppose this piece of legislation, are doing New Zealanders a disservice. They're doing New Zealanders a disservice because New Zealanders want legislation like this. New Zealanders know that gangs are a huge problem in New Zealand and they need to be tackled. We know that Labor didn't do enough. Labor failed. Labor let gangs run rampant around New Zealand. This government instead has passed multiple pieces of legislation to clamp down on gangs. This government has put more police officers onto the streets of New Zealand, more police officers into the hotspots where they're required. We've passed legislation which has clamped down on the likes of P, and we're seeing results. We're seeing results that the opposition never got when they were in a government. We're seeing results like crime rates at 30-year lows. We're seeing results where P is starting to disappear off the streets. And, Mr Speaker, this is another piece of legislation that will help with that situation. Mr Speaker, the Labor Party minority view started off like this. Labor has no truck with gangs, with a culture that promotes, encourages, facilitates or tolerates criminal activity collectively or individually amongst its members. Never a more disingenuous statement have I heard. Never a more disingenuous statement have I heard, because nothing in the way in which they're planning on voting on this legislation, nothing in the way in which they have said in their commentary in the House today leads us to believe that they actually support that point of view. Mr Speaker, the Greens are in a similar camp. They're not as strident as the Labor Party, but to quote a man, Stephen Rollo, who made submissions to the Select Committee, a man who just so happens to work for the gangs, a man who is a paid lawyer, paid to defend gang members, to come into this House and quote somebody who acts in that capacity, I find appalling. Mr Speaker, I wouldn't be listening to the lawyer of gang members, because that lawyer is coming to select committees promoting and defending gang activity. Mr Speaker, gang members, gang patches don't stand for anything good at all. The gang patch that a patched gang member wears stands for pride in what their organisation stands for. The pride in that organisation is criminal. The gangs sure have an element of collectivity that some gang members benefit from, but predominantly out there, gangs are causing crime, gangs are intimidating New Zealanders, gangs are threatening New Zealanders. We had those very New Zealanders come to our Select Committee, and Murupara Area School has been quoted a number of times in this House so far. Todd McLean knows about Murupara Area School because he's a good representative of his people. Murupara Area School told us that children and students do not need to see gang insignia plastered about their school, and they need to be protected from it. The Labor and the Green parties do not believe that children should be protected from gang insignia. They're trying to say that they don't think the legislation's going far enough, but if they think something needs to be happening, they should be voting for this legislation. Mr Speaker, Kawerau District Council also submitted to the committee, another area that Mr McClay represents because he is such a good member for that area. Kawerau District Council felt the need to put on record their views. Their view was around the fact that if you're to require council workers and public servants to enforce trespass orders and to serve trespass orders on gang members, then you're just putting those very people at risk. The opposition thinks there are enough laws at the moment to take action against gang patch-wearing individuals. Well, the very people who have to take that action, who have to have trespass orders served on the gang members, they feel intimidated, they feel threatened. Mr. Speaker, this side of the House wants to take greater action on crime. This side of the House wants to take greater action on gangs. The opposition has told New Zealanders through the Select Committee process, through their comments in this House tonight, that they support the gang members over the good law-abiding members of the public. It's not rubbish, Mr. Goff. It's not rubbish, because I heard your speech. I heard you saying that this piece of legislation shouldn't be passed. I heard what you had to say. And to put the comments that you had in the minority report, where you say that you support New Zealanders, but actually you're prepared to vote against it, I find that hugely disingenuous, and I think Mr. Macleay should be the one who should be congratulated. Mr. Macleay is the one who is doing a good service for New Zealanders. His constituents know it. New Zealanders know it. This piece of legislation will be good for law-abiding people. Sure, the gangs will suffer because they can't wear their patch of pride, the patch they try to wear to promote criminal activity. That's what should be clamped down on. That's what the Labour Party should be supporting. They should be supporting this bill.
I call order. I call Brendan Horan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill reflects